She was from England. He was from Indonesia. Two strangers met in a small cafe on a rainy London afternoon. One searching for warmth, the other trying to remember what home felt like. What started as a simple hello became a story that changed them both forever. This is not a story about forever love. It's a story about the kind of love that stays. Even when it's gone. London rain fell in the way it always did, quietly, persistently, as if the sky had grown tired of holding back everything it felt. The streets were soaked, shining under the dim yellow lights, and people moved fast with umbrellas like small shields against the gray world. Raka stood behind the counter of the roastery corner, the small coffee shop tucked between a bookstore and a flower shop. The smell of roasted beans filled the air. Soft jazz played from an old speaker, and the sound of rain blended with the clinking of cups. He had been in London for almost 2 years now, studying architecture by day, working part-time here by night. Yet the city still felt strange. Too quiet sometimes, too polite, too cold. Back home in Indonesia, rain smelled like soil and comfort. Here, it smelled like loneliness. He wiped the counter for the third time, even though it was already clean. The doorbell jingled, and a gust of cold air entered the room. A woman stepped in, soaked jacket, messy blonde hair, camera hanging loosely from her neck. She looked around as if searching for a place to breathe. Cold out there, huh? Raka said, trying his best to sound casual. She smiled faintly, her lips trembling a little. You could say that. What can I get you? She looked at the menu, then back at him. Flat white, extra warm. He nodded, repeating the words softly. Flat white, extra warm. Her accent made the shop feel even smaller, her voice echoing gently between the walls. As he steamed the milk, she sat near the window, staring at the rain. The droplets slid down the glass like tears that refused to fall. He placed the cup in front of her. Here you go. Thanks. She held the cup with both hands, as if trying to absorb the heat through her fingers. Raka hesitated before speaking again. You look like you've had a long day. She laughed quietly. Is it that obvious? Just a bit, he said with a grin. I'm Raka. She looked up, surprised by his accent. Raka, that's not English. No, he chuckled. Indonesia. She repeated softly, Raka. Nice name. And you? Emma. Their eyes met for a moment, brief but heavy, like two waves touching before retreating back into the sea. The next few days, Emma returned, always around the same time, always ordering the same drink, flat white, extra warm. Sometimes she brought her camera. Sometimes she just sat by the window, lost in thought. Raka started to remember her rhythm. The way she tucked her hair behind her ear. The way she smiled at her cup before taking the first sip. He didn't know what made her come back, but he didn't question it either. Maybe it was the coffee. Maybe it was the warmth. Or maybe it was something in the air between them that neither could name. One evening, the rain was heavier than usual. The sound against the window was like soft applause. The cafe was nearly empty. Emma entered, shivering. Her hair was damp, her cheeks pink from the cold. You're late today, Raka teased gently. Tube was delayed, she said, dropping her camera bag beside her. London loves its chaos, he smiled. Same drink? You know me well. As he prepared her coffee, she wandered to the counter and watched him work. Steam rose between them like a soft curtain. "You always seem calm," she said, "even when it's busy." He shrugged. "Coffee helps, and maybe I've learned that silence isn't always empty." She tilted her head. "That's something I should learn too." Raka poured the milk carefully, forming a small heart on the surface. He slid the cup to her with a shy smile. Emma noticed it and grinned. "Is that intentional?" "Maybe dangerous move, Raka." "Why?" "Because now I'll expect one every time." He laughed, and for the first time since arriving in London, it didn't feel like a foreign sound. Over the following weeks, their conversations grew longer. Emma told him she used to be a travel photographer, that she once chased sunsets across Europe but had stopped taking pictures since her last exhibit failed. "I thought I loved photography," she said once, staring into her cup. "But now, I'm not sure if I love it or if I just needed it to love me back." Raka listened. He didn't offer solutions, he just listened. It was something London rarely gave, quiet attention. When she asked about his life, he told her about Indonesia, the noise of the markets, the warmth of the people, the smell of wet earth after rain. She said it sounded like color, and he said London felt like grayscale. They both laughed. Sometimes she helped him close the shop. Sometimes they just sat in silence. It was a comfortable kind of quiet, the kind that fills the air with unspoken understanding. One night, as they stood outside the cafe, the rain had stopped, but the air was still cold. Streetlights reflected on the wet pavement like melted gold. Emma looked up at the cloudy sky. "Do you ever miss home?" "Every day," he said, "but some days. Less, why less?" He looked at her. Because of days like this, she smiled, softly, almost sadly. "You're too good with words." "I'm just honest," he said. She didn't reply. Instead, she took out her camera and pointed it at him. "Smile," she said. He hesitated. "Why?" "Because you look like someone who hasn't been photographed enough." The click of the shutter echoed softly between them. "You see?" she said. "You're part of my London now." Raka didn't know what to say, so he just smiled. But inside, something shifted, something small but undeniable. A week later, Emma didn't come, nor the next day, or the one after that. The cafe felt emptier without her laughter blending with the rain. Raka tried not to notice, but he did every time the doorbell didn't ring, every time a stranger sat in her usual spot. On the fourth day, he found a small envelope left behind the counter. His name was written in neat handwriting. Inside was a photograph, the one Emma had taken that night. On the back, she had written, "Thank you for the warmth in a cold city. Some people leave, but the feeling stays. Emma." Raka stood there for a long time, holding the photo like it was proof that something real had happened, even if it was brief. Outside, the rain began again, gentle, persistent, like a memory that refused to fade. He smiled sadly and whispered goodbye, "Emma." But somewhere inside him, he knew every story that starts with hello never truly ends. The rain had stopped the next morning, but London still looked heavy, the sky pale, the streets glazed in yesterday's sadness. Raka walked to the cafe earlier than usual. The air was cold enough to sting his cheeks, yet something in him felt restless, as if the city had stolen his balance overnight. He still had Emma's photograph in his wallet. He'd looked at it too many times already. The slight curve of his awkward smile. The blur of golden streetlights behind him. It wasn't the best picture, but it felt alive, real, and a little too precious for something so small. As he turned the key to open the cafe, he told himself to stop thinking about her. She was just a customer. She had her own world, her own life. He was just someone who made her coffee. That's all. But when the bell above the door rang an hour later, and she walked in, hair tied up, scarf wrapped loosely around her neck, eyes still bright even under gray skies. Every argument he'd made to himself disappeared like steam. "Morning," she said softly. He smiled before he could stop himself. "You came back." "I did. I wasn't sure you'd still be here." "Where else would I be?" he teased. "This place practically owns me." She laughed and sat at her usual spot. "Then I guess I'll have the usual, Mr. Owned by the coffee shop. Coming right up," he said, pretending to bow. As he prepared her drink, she took out her camera and began adjusting the lens. "You don't mind, do you?" He shook his head. "As long as you don't catch me doing something embarrassing." "I can't promise that," she replied. The shutter clicked once, twice. The sound was light, but it made something inside him stir. That day stretched longer than it should have. The customers came and went, but Emma stayed, editing her photos, sipping her coffee, occasionally looking up to meet his eyes. Every time she did, he felt a quiet warmth spread through him. Round closing time, when the last customer left, Emma was still there. She stood up, helped him collect the cups, and began wiping a table. "You don't have to do that," he said. "I know," she replied, "but I want to." Her tone was calm, almost intimate, as if she belonged there. He watched her move around the cafe, easy, familiar, and wondered when this stranger had started feeling like part of his world. When they finished, they sat near the window, watching the rain begin again. "Raka," she said suddenly, her voice quieter than the drizzle outside. "Do you ever feel like you're living between two lives?" He turned to her. "What do you mean?" "You're here, in the city, but part of you is somewhere else. Like you left a version of yourself behind." He nodded slowly. "All the time. Back home, things were loud. People didn't need words to understand each other. Here, everything's distant, polite. I miss the noise, the mess, the warmth." Emma smiled faintly. "Maybe that's why I come here. It feels a little less cold." For a long moment, they just sat there. No words, no movement. Just the sound of the rain tapping gently on the glass. The next few weeks unfolded quietly in patterns, like the rhythm of breathing. Emma would come to the cafe almost every afternoon. Sometimes she brought stories about the city, a couple arguing at the train station, an old man feeding pigeons near the river, a musician playing alone on the bridge. Other times, she said nothing at all. She would just sit by the window, her camera beside her, eyes distant. Raka learned not to ask too many questions. He learned that sometimes the best thing he could offer was silence, a space where she didn't have to explain herself. But he noticed things. The way she avoided looking at her phone. The way her smile dimmed when certain songs played. Once, she came in with her eyes a little red, and when he asked if she was okay, she only said, "Just London being London." One evening, as they walked out of the cafe together, Emma stopped suddenly. Do you ever think, she asked, that some people are meant to meet, but not meant to stay? The question hit him harder than he expected. Why would you say that? She looked at the wet pavement, not at him, because that's what it feels like sometimes. Like life lets you meet someone to remind you of something, then takes them away before you get used to it. Raka said nothing for a moment. The streetlights shimmered against the rain, and a quiet chill hung between them. Maybe, he said finally, some people meet so they can remember what warmth feels like, not to keep it, but to know it exists. Emma looked at him then, her eyes soft, wet, and shining. That's beautiful, she whispered. He smiled sadly. It's true. Later that night, he couldn't sleep. He thought about her words, about the look in her eyes. He thought about how every conversation they had seemed to linger longer than it should, like echoes that refused to fade. He knew he shouldn't hope. People like Emma didn't stay. London itself was full of hellos and goodbyes that never sensed. But hope, he realized, didn't ask for permission. It just existed, quietly, stubbornly. A few days later, Emma came in wearing a thick coat and a nervous smile. Hey, she greeted. Hey, he replied, noticing something different about her tone. I was wondering if... She paused, fidgeting with her camera strap. You'd show me a bit of your world. My world? Yeah, she said. You always talk about Indonesia like it's a painting. I want to see it through your eyes. Maybe not the country, but the version of it that lives in you. He laughed softly. That's poetic. I'm a photographer, she grinned. It's my job to romanticize things. So, that Sunday, they took a train out of the city, just far enough to find open skies, and a small Indonesian market tucked away in a corner of town. Raka bought her tea bottle and fried snacks wrapped in brown paper. She took photos of everything, the colors, the laughter, the sound of a language she didn't understand but somehow felt at home in. Watching her there, surrounded by pieces of his homeland, Raka felt something twist in his chest. A mix of joy and fear, because for the first time in a long while, something felt right. And things that feel right never seem to last. On the train back, Emma leaned her head against the window, eyes half closed. Thank you, she said quietly, for today. You're welcome. I didn't realize how much I needed this. He turned to her. Needed what? To feel connected again, she said, to something real. Raka wanted to tell her that she was real, that she was more real than the city itself. But the words stayed stuck in his throat. Instead, he said softly, I'm glad you came. When they reached London, it was already dark. They walked together through the nearly empty streets. Emma stopped at the corner near her flat and turned to him. Can I ask you something? She said. Of course. If you hadn't come to London, do you think we'd still have met? He smiled gently. No. But maybe somewhere else, another time, another place. She laughed softly. Do you believe in that kind of thing? I didn't, he said, until now. For a moment, the air between them felt alive, charged, fragile, infinite. Then she whispered, Good night, Raka. He wanted to say something, anything, to keep her there a little longer, but all he managed was, Good night, Emma. As she walked away, he felt the warmth fade, replaced by the familiar chill of the London wind. That night, he dreamt of home, Not Jakarta, not Yogyakarta, but of Emma sitting in his small hometown cafe, laughing under a tropical downpour, calling his name like she'd always belonged there. When he woke, the dream felt both distant and painfully close, like a memory he'd never had. And he realized something then. Love doesn't always need a promise to exist. Sometimes it's enough to have a moment that feels like forever, even if forever never comes. London was colder now. The trees had begun shedding their last leaves, and the wind carried the smell of winter, sharp, distant, inevitable. Raka could feel the season changing, not just in the air, but in the way Emma's eyes lingered a little less, the way her laughter didn't stay as long as it used to. They still met at the cafe, the same place, the same table near the window, but something had shifted between them. Not broken, not gone, just quieter. She would still take pictures. He would still make her coffee, but their words were fewer now, replaced by long pauses that felt both comfortable and unbearable. Sometimes he caught her staring outside, lost in thought. When he asked what she was thinking, she would smile and say, "Nothing, just life." But he could tell there was something she wasn't saying. And so was he. One evening, when the cafe had emptied and the lights had turned soft, Emma placed her camera on the counter and said, "Raka, do you believe in timing?" He looked up, caught off guard. "Timing? Yeah," she said, tracing the rim of her cup. "How sometimes people meet at the right place, but the wrong time." He smiled faintly. "You think that's us?" "I don't know," she said, her voice trembling slightly. "Maybe." He wanted to tell her she was wrong, that there was no wrong time for something that felt this real. But the truth was, his visa was expiring in 2 months. He hadn't told her. He could in single quotes T-dot, because if he said it out loud, it would make it real dot, so he stayed silent, pretending not to understand what she meant. She didn't press further. Maybe she already knew. Days turned into weeks, and December arrived with its early sunsets and long shadows. Emma started coming less frequently. When she did, she wore thicker coats, and her hands were always cold. "Are you busy with work?" he asked one day. She nodded. "Yeah. My editor's sending me to Scotland for a project. It's a long one." "How long?" She hesitated. "A few months. Maybe more." The silence that followed was heavier than the rain outside. He wanted to say "don't go," but he knew how selfish that would sound dot, so instead he smiled and said, "That's amazing. You deserve it." She smiled back, but her eyes shimmered, as if his words hurt more than they helped. That night, Raka closed the cafe alone. He stood behind the counter, staring at the chair she always sat in, the one by the window, where the light would fall on her face just right every afternoon. He imagined her laughter echoing faintly, her voice asking for the usual. He could almost hear it. Almost. When he finally turned off the lights, he whispered to the empty room, "Maybe some people are meant to stay in our hearts, not our lives." And the cafe fell silent again. 2 weeks later, Emma showed up unexpectedly, cheeks flushed, hair damp from the drizzle. Raka froze mid-motion, the cup in his hand trembling slightly. "Hey," she said softly. "Hey. I wanted to see you before I leave," she said. He tried to smile. "When? Tomorrow morning." He nodded slowly. "Scotland." She hesitated, then said, "No, Indonesia." His heart stopped. "What?" "I got an assignment," she said, almost whispering. "A documentary project. Java, Bali, Sulawesi. I'll be there for months." The irony hit him so hard he almost laughed. She was going to his country, the place he missed every day, and he was here, counting days until he had to leave England. "Funny, isn't it?" she said with a sad smile. "The world just keeps spinning us in circles." "Yeah," he replied, voice breaking a little. "It really does." They sat in silence after that. The cafe was dim, the world outside muffled by rain. Finally, Emma spoke. "I don't want to say goodbye." He looked at her, and his throat tightened. "Then don't." She shook her head. "We have to." Maybe not out loud, but still. He reached across the table and took her hand. Her fingers were cold, fragile, like something the world could easily take away. "Emma," he said softly, "sometimes love doesn't end. It just changes shape." She blinked back tears. "That sounds like something people say to make themselves feel better." He smiled sadly. "Maybe, but it's still true." That night, they walked together through the quiet streets, side by side but not touching. The city lights flickered on puddles, and every reflection felt like a memory waiting to fade. When they reached the bridge, Emma stopped. The wind tugged at her scarf, and she looked out over the river. "I hate endings," she said. "Me too," he whispered. "But maybe," she continued, "some endings are just disguised beginnings. We just don't know what they're beginning yet." Raka looked at her, memorizing every detail. Her voice, her scent, the faint tremble of her lips. He knew this moment would replay in his mind for years. "Will you come back?" he asked. She smiled through her tears. "Maybe." "Will you wait?" He laughed softly. "That's the problem, isn't it? We always wait for people who might never return." She nodded. "Still, it's beautiful to wait." When the morning came, she left quietly. No calls, no messages. Just a note slipped under the cafe door. It read, "Thank you for making London feel like home. If I ever forget what warmth feels like, I'll remember you." He folded the paper carefully and placed it inside his wallet, next to the photograph they took the day they met, the same one he'd carried since the beginning. He didn't cry, not because he wasn't broken, but because some heartbreaks are too quiet for tears. He simply stood there, looking out the window, watching the city wake up the same way it always did. And somewhere, between the sound of footsteps and distant traffic, he could almost hear her laugh again. Months passed. The cafe stayed the same, but everything inside it had changed. New faces came, new stories filled the air. Yet he still caught himself turning every time the doorbell rang, half expecting her to walk in again. Sometimes he'd see a woman with blonde hair and feel his heart jolt, only to realize it wasn't her. Other times, when the rain felt a certain way, he'd swear he could smell her perfume, faint, like a memory refusing to fade. One late evening, he closed the cafe early. He sat by the window, cup of coffee in hand, watching the lights shimmer against the wet streets. And for the first time, he allowed himself to smile, a real, quiet smile, because even though she was gone, the warmth she left behind still lingered. Not as a wound, but as something gentler, a reminder that love, no matter how brief, changes the way we see the world. He looked at the empty chair across from him and whispered, "Goodbye, Emma." Then, after a long pause, He added softly, or maybe, see you again. Outside, the rain began to fall. It had been 8 months since the morning Emma left. London had moved on, as cities always do. Buses still roared past the narrow streets. The coffee shop still opened at 7, and the same gray clouds still hung above like an unfinished painting. But for Raka, time didn't flow the same way anymore. It circled. Every day felt like a quiet echo of the one before. The same roads, the same smell of rain, the same hollow seat by the window. He had learned to stop expecting the bell above the door to ring with her face behind it. But some days, he still caught himself glancing up, just in case. He'd renewed his visa, though he wasn't sure why. Maybe it was habit. Maybe he was still chasing a version of himself that existed only when she was around. The cafe had changed owners. Raka now managed the place, but even with the new signboard and paint, it still felt like theirs. Sometimes customers would compliment the warmth of the place, and he'd smile quietly, because they didn't know that warmth wasn't built by design. It was left behind by someone who once made London feel like home. He often wondered where Emma was now. Maybe under the same rain, maybe watching sunsets in Bali, or chasing the golden light she always talked about. He liked to imagine her happy, camera in hand, heart at peace. That thought alone kept him going. One evening, while closing up, Raka found a postcard slipped under the door. It was old. Edges curled, the ink slightly smudged from the rain. On the front was a photograph, a narrow street lined with red lanterns, somewhere in Yogyakarta. On the back, written in the same handwriting he remembered too well, were just 3 words. It still rains. No name, no address. But he knew. He stood there for a long time, staring at the card as if it might speak. Then he laughed softly, not from joy, but from disbelief at how small the world could feel sometimes. He placed the postcard beside the photograph in his wallet, 2 fragile things that somehow held an entire story. As months slipped into another winter, Raka finally decided to return to Indonesia. Not because he was running away, but because some goodbyes need distance to heal. Before leaving, he closed the cafe one last time. He stood by the window, watching London rain one more evening, and whispered, "Thank you." It wasn't clear if he was thanking the city or her, maybe both. Jakarta was louder than he remembered. The humidity clung to his skin. The streets pulsed with color and chaos. Everything was alive. And yet, in all that noise, he felt strangely calm. He took a small job at a quiet cafe near the old town, not unlike the one he had left behind. Sometimes, he caught himself arranging the tables in the same way, choosing the same warm lights. Maybe he was building an echo of something that used to exist far away. One afternoon, a woman entered the cafe, foreign, light-haired, camera in hand. For a heartbeat, his chest tightened. But when she smiled politely and ordered in broken Indonesian, he realized she wasn't Emma. And yet, he didn't feel disappointment, only warmth. Because life, he thought, had a way of sending reminders rather than replacements. Weeks passed. The rhythm of his days changed. He woke early, rode his motorcycle through crowded alleys, learned to laugh with old friends again. But sometimes, when the monsoon rain came pouring down, the sound would pull him back to that little cafe in London, to the bridge by the river, to a girl with wind in her hair saying, "Maybe some endings are just disguised beginnings." and for a moment, he would close his eyes and feel her there beside him. One day, while he was cleaning the cafe, a young boy came running in with a small envelope. "For you, Mr. Raka," he said cheerfully. Raka took it with mild confusion. There was no name on the front, just a small drawing of a coffee cup and a rain cloud. Inside was a letter, handwritten, the ink faint but familiar. "Dear Raka, I don't know if this will reach you, but I hope it does. I'm still chasing the rain. It follows me everywhere, or maybe I follow it. Indonesia has been kinder to me than I expected. I finally understand what you meant when you said warmth doesn't need to be held to exist. Every time it rains here, I think of London and of you. If our paths ever cross again, I hope it's not as strangers." He read it twice, then 3 times. The words blurred, not because they were unclear, but because his eyes refused to stay dry. He placed the letter on the counter and stared out at the rain falling over Jakarta. Different sky. Same sound dot, and for the first time in a long while, he felt peace. That night, as he closed the cafe, he decided to leave a letter too. No destination, no name. He simply wrote, "The rain found me again. I think that means I'm home." He slipped it into his old wallet next to her postcard. Not to send, not to wait, just to remember. Months later, a photography exhibition opened in Bali, titled "The Warmth Between Us." The last photo in the gallery showed a small coffee shop window in London. Raindrops glistening on the glass, a faint silhouette of a man cleaning tables inside. The caption read, "Sometimes love doesn't leave. It just changes address." And somewhere in the crowd that evening, a woman stood quietly, smiling through her tears. Raka never knew about the exhibition. He was in Yogyakarta by then, helping his cousin open a new cafe. Every morning, he'd brew coffee, open the window, and watch the rain fall, soft, unhurried, familiar. Sometimes he wondered if she ever thought of him. Other times, he simply smiled and whispered, "It still rains." Because in some way, that was enough. The world had turned, life had changed, but the warmth between them, the quiet, unspoken kind, had never really gone. It had been 3 years since the last letter. Raka no longer waited for the postman, but every time he saw a paper envelope, his chest still tightened, not from hope, but from habit. He had settled into a quiet rhythm in Yogyakarta. The cafe he built with his cousin had become something of a local secret. Students came to read. Travelers stopped for comfort. Old couples sat silently by the window as if remembering their own youth. Raka liked to watch people. Their stories were everywhere, in the way someone stirred their coffee absent-mindedly, or in the glance exchanged between 2 strangers who might one day fall in love. He had grown older, calmer. His laugh had changed. It came slower, deeper, more thoughtful. But every now and then, when it rained, he still caught himself turning toward the window, expecting, against reason, to see a familiar face under an umbrella. Emma, meanwhile, was somewhere in northern Italy. Her photography had finally gained recognition, small exhibitions, magazine features, a few freelance projects that paid enough to keep her moving. She never stayed too long in one place. Her friends joked she lived like a ghost, always arriving just as others were leaving, always leaving when the world began to feel too familiar. But the truth was, Emma was chasing something she could never quite name. Every photograph she took felt like an attempt to hold onto a feeling. Warmth in a stranger's eyes, sunlight on a rainy street, the quiet pause before goodbye. In every frame, Raka existed somewhere. Not his face, not his voice, just the trace of what he had taught her. That love didn't need to be loud to be real. Sometimes, when Emma sent her work to galleries, she would write the same small note in the corner of her submissions. For the one who taught me how to see. She never explained who that was, and no one ever asked. But every time she wrote it, she smiled softly, like whispering to the past. In Yogyakarta, Raka once found one of her photographs in an online article. It was titled "The Warmth Between Us," the same name as the exhibition she once held. The image was familiar, a rainy window, a reflection of a cafe inside. He stared at it for a long time before realizing that was his cafe. The angle, the light, the chair by the window, even the small crack on the frame matched perfectly. He didn't know when she had taken it. Maybe years ago, before she left. Or maybe, somehow, she had come back quietly and photographed it from outside, without ever coming in. The thought didn't make him sad. It made him smile that she had returned, even if only as a shadow behind the glass. He printed the photograph and hung it on the wall of his cafe. When people asked who took it, he simply said, "Someone who once knew this place better than I did." Life went on. Emma traveled across Asia, collecting moments that felt like echoes of her old life. A man brewing coffee in Hanoi who reminded her of Raka's patience. The smell of wet soil in Kyoto that carried the same warmth as Yogyakarta after rain. Everywhere she went, the world seemed to hum with a quiet memory of him. And Raka. He stayed. He built, taught, and learned. He became the kind of person who made others feel safe. The kind of person who once made Emma believe in love that didn't need promises. Sometimes people asked why he never married. He always answered with a gentle laugh. Maybe I already met her. Maybe that was enough. Years later, during another heavy monsoon, the cafe flooded. Raka spent the night moving furniture, lifting books and chairs onto higher shelves. When the storm finally eased, he sat by the doorway, drenched and exhausted, watching the street shimmer under streetlights. From his pocket, he took out an old, worn-out wallet. Inside were two things: a postcard that said it still rains and a folded letter that read, "If our paths ever cross again." The ink had faded, but the meaning never did. He smiled quietly and whispered to the empty night, "Looks like the rain's still chasing us, Emma." And for a brief, fragile second, he swore he could feel her beside him. The same warmth, the same silence, the same understanding that never needed words. In another part of the world. At the same hour, Emma stood on a balcony in Lisbon, watching the rain fall against cobblestone streets. Her phone buzzed with messages, gallery invitations, friends asking where she'd disappear next, but she ignored them all. She was staring at the rain, lost in the same thought. Time had changed her. She was older now, her eyes softer, her hair streaked with gold. But in that moment, she felt 25 again, standing under the London rain with a boy who said hello over coffee. She lifted her camera and took a picture of the storm, not because it was beautiful, but because it reminded her of him later. She uploaded the photograph to her website. The caption read, "Some connections don't fade. They just learn to live in silence." Months later, A tourist from Portugal visited Raka's cafe in Yogyakarta. She admired the photo on the wall, the rainy window, and asked if she could take a picture of it. Raka nodded, smiling. Of course. When she posted it online, the algorithm, or fate, or both, placed it beside Emma's recent photo of Lisbon's rain. 2 frames, 2 different cities, 2 rains. Viewed side by side, they looked almost identical. Same mood, same color, same quiet ache. Thousands of people liked the post. Only 2 in the world would have understood what it truly meant. Years passed. Emma stopped traveling as much. She started teaching photography. Raka opened a second cafe by the beach, where sunsets replaced rain. They lived full, gentle lives. They met new people, made new memories. But somewhere, deep down, the line connecting them remained unseen, untouchable, unbroken. Because some stories aren't meant to end with reunion or closure. Some simply continue, in the way to hearts, though miles apart, still beat to the same quiet rhythm dot, and sometimes, when the wind changed or rain began to fall, both of them, without knowing, would look up at the same sky and smile, not because they were sad, but because they finally understood. Love doesn't always ask to be returned. Sometimes, it just asks to be remembered. There are moments in life that do not announce their importance. They just happen, quietly, like a sigh between 2 heartbeats. For Raka, it came on an ordinary morning in Yogyakarta. The air was heavy with the smell of rain. He had just opened his cafe, the one by the beach now, where the sea breathed in rhythm with the sky. The waves rolled close enough to hear. The sound like pages turning in a book he thought he had already finished reading. He made coffee for himself, black, simple, and sat by the open window. It was then he noticed an envelope on the counter. The mailman must have dropped it early. It had come from Europe. No return address, only one word written on the back in faint ink. Listen. Inside was not a letter, only a small flash drive. He smiled a little, shaking his head. It was so like her, even after all this time. No explanations, only mysteries. He plugged it into his old laptop. A single audio file appeared, titled The Sound of Goodbye.mp3. When he clicked it, there was no music at first, only a soft hum, wind, faint rain, a heartbeat of silence. Then her voice, familiar, older, warmer. If you're hearing this, I guess I still wanted to say thank you. You once told me that silence is its own kind of music. I didn't understand then, but I do now. I stopped running. I teach now. Photography, light, patience. You would laugh at how serious I've become. But sometimes, when I show my students how to capture warmth in a photo, I tell them about you, about a man who brewed coffee as if it were a kind of prayer. About the rain that felt like home. She paused. He could hear her breathing, steady and real. I won't say I miss you, because that word never felt right for us. Missing means something is gone, and you're not gone. You're just everywhere. A long silence followed. Then her voice, softer now, trembling at the edge of tears and laughter. If love has a sound, Raka, I think it's rain. Always rain. The recording ended with the faintest sound, a shutter click from a camera, then waves, then nothing. Raka sat for a long time, his coffee untouched, his eyes fixed on the horizon. He didn't cry, not because he wasn't sad, but because there was nothing left to mourn. He looked around the cafe, at the plants growing toward the light, the ocean breathing in and out. Everything, he thought, had a rhythm. Even goodbyes. Months later, a letter arrived from one of Emma's colleagues. It said she had passed away peacefully after an illness she'd hidden from almost everyone. Her last project, a collection of sound and photographs, was being completed posthumously. The title, The Sound of Goodbye. Raka folded the letter and placed it beside the others, the postcard, the note, the letter she'd written years ago. He didn't open them again. He didn't need to, because everything she had ever meant to say, she already had. That evening, the rain returned. He walked to the edge of the shore, the sand cool beneath his feet, the sky turning the color of soft gray glass. He closed his eyes and listened. The sound of water against the earth, the distant thunder, the whisper of wind moving through the palms. Somewhere in all that noise, he could almost hear her, laughing, breathing, existing in the rhythm of the rain. He whispered into the wind, "Goodbye, Emma." Then, after a beat, "Thank you." The rain didn't answer. It didn't need to. It simply kept falling, gentle and endless, carrying his words across the sea. Years later, travelers passing through Yogyakarta would find a small cafe near the beach, known for its quietness. On one wall hung a series of photographs, rain, windows, oceans, all unnamed. If you listened closely, sometimes the faint sound of waves and rain played through hidden speakers. And at the bottom of the wall, engraved in tiny letters, were words no one fully understood. Some stories don't end. They just become sound. And somewhere, far beyond the edge of the ocean, where rain meets light, and memory turns to peace, two hearts that once met under a foreign sky kept beating in perfect, parallel rhythm. Because love, real love, doesn't need to last forever to be true. It only needs to be remembered, softly like the sound of rain. Asterisk, asterisk, they met once. In a city that wasn't home to either of them. They shared coffee, laughter, silence, and a kind of love that didn't ask to be owned. Years passed. The world changed. But somewhere between the sound of rain and the warmth of memory, they learned something simple. That love is not measured by how long it lasts, but by how deeply it changes us. Emma taught Raka to see beauty in the smallest things, in light, in stillness, in the way people say goodbye. Raka taught Emma that home isn't a place, but a person, and that kindness is its own kind of forever. They never needed promises. They only needed one hello that changed everything. And when the world grew quiet again, when the last word was spoken and the rain began to fade, their story remained, not as pain, not as loss, but as proof. Proof that even the briefest love can echo for a lifetime. Proof that sometimes the most beautiful goodbyes are the ones said without words. So if you ever find yourself standing under the rain, listen closely. You might just hear the sound of two hearts, still whispering across time. It still rains.